The wedding invitations were printed on Italian linen paper with gold embossed lettering. Marcus Ashford and Keisha Williams request the pleasure of your company at their marriage ceremony. 200 guests would attend. The venue was the historic Ashford estate, a sprawling mansion that had been in Marcus's family for 6 generations. Everything was perfect, except Marcus Ashford had no intention of marrying Keisha Williams. He was about to humiliate her in front of everyone she loved, and he believed he had every right to do it. What Marcus didn't know was that Keisha carried a secret that would destroy his family's carefully constructed lies and expose the truth about the Ashford fortune. Have you ever seen someone's prejudice cost them everything they thought they owned? Let's start at the beginning, 3 years before the wedding that never happened. Marcus Ashford met Keisha Williams at a corporate merger negotiation. She was the lead attorney for a tech startup his family's investment firm was acquiring. He noticed her immediately, not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because she commanded the room with an authority that made hardened executives defer to her judgment. Keisha Williams was brilliant. Harvard Law School, top of her class, recruited by 3 major firms before she turned 30. She specialized in corporate acquisitions, and her track record was flawless. 15 major deals, 0 litigation, perfect execution every time. Marcus was impressed. His family had built their wealth on recognizing talent, and Keisha Williams was undeniably talented. What began as professional respect evolved into something more. Coffee meetings turned into dinner dates. Business conversations became personal confessions. Within 6 months, Marcus proposed with a diamond ring that cost more than most people's annual salary. But there was always something slightly off about how Marcus introduced Keisha to his world. He loved showing her off at business functions where her intelligence made him look good. But family gatherings were different. Awkward. Tense. His mother, Catherine Ashford, smiled politely but never warmly. His father, Richard Ashford, asked pointed questions about Keisha's family background, her parents' occupations, where exactly she grew up. Marcus always changed the subject quickly, protectively. Keisha noticed, but she attributed it to normal family adjustment. Rich families were complicated. She'd read enough about old money dynamics to understand that outsiders always face scrutiny. She didn't realize the scrutiny had nothing to do with her credentials and everything to do with her skin color. The Ashford family had a secret, one they'd protected for 6 generations. Their wealth, their status, their entire legacy was built on a foundation of stolen property and deliberate erasure. And Keisha Williams, unknowingly, was about to expose everything. The engagement period was strange. Marcus was affectionate in private but distant at family events. Catherine planned the wedding with the enthusiasm of someone organizing a funeral. Richard kept suggesting they sign an extensive prenuptial agreement, one that would essentially leave Keisha with nothing if the marriage ended. Marcus defended her, sort of. He negotiated the prenup terms but never questioned why his family was so hostile to the woman he claimed to love. He never asked his mother why she flinched when Keisha touched the family heirlooms. He never confronted his father about the way Richard studied Keisha like she was a threat that needed to be neutralized. 3 weeks before the wedding, everything changed. Marcus received a phone call from his grandfather, William Ashford, the family patriarch who rarely involved himself in daily affairs. "Come to the estate immediately. We need to discuss your upcoming marriage." Marcus drove to the family mansion, the same place where his wedding would take place in 3 weeks. William sat in his study, surrounded by portraits of Ashford ancestors, all of them white, all of them wealthy, all of them proud. "Sit down, Marcus." William's voice carried the weight of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "We need to talk about this girl you're planning to marry. Keisha. Her name is Keisha. I know her name." William opened a folder on his desk. "I also know her background, her family, her history." Marcus felt defensive anger rising. "Keisha is one of the most accomplished attorneys in the state. Her background is impeccable. Her professional background, yes, but her family." William pulled out documents, genealogy records, old photographs. "Do you know where the Williams family comes from?" Marcus shrugged. "Georgia, I think. Her parents moved to California when she was young." William laid out a photograph from 1847. A plantation record. The Williams family were slaves, Marcus, on a plantation called Ashford Acres. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Our plantation. William nodded slowly. Your great-great-great-grandfather owned Keisha Williams's great-great-great-grandparents. The Ashford fortune was built on slave labor, specifically on the labor of the Williams family and dozens of others. The room felt like it was spinning. Marcus stared at the document, seeing names that connected his family's wealth to Keisha's family's suffering. But that was over 150 years ago, Marcus protested weakly. What does that have to do with us now? Everything. William's voice was cold, because the Williams family has been trying to reclaim what was stolen from them for generations. Marcus looked up sharply. What do you mean? William pulled out more documents. Legal claims, property disputes, genealogical research. The Williams family has maintained records proving that Ashford Acres was actually purchased with money stolen from a free black landowner named Samuel Williams in 1845. Your great-great-great-grandfather didn't build this fortune through hard work and innovation. He built it through theft and violence. Marcus felt sick. Does Keisha know? I don't know. But I know what happens if you marry her. She gains legal standing to challenge our property claims. She becomes family, which gives her access to our records, our documents, our history. William leaned forward. You cannot marry this woman, Marcus. You cannot give her the legal tools to destroy everything our family has built. But I love her, Marcus said, though the words sounded hollow even to himself. William's expression was merciless. Then you're a fool. Love doesn't protect fortunes. Love doesn't preserve legacies. You will end this engagement, or I will disinherit you completely. Marcus left the estate that night with a choice. Marry the woman he loved and risk losing everything his family represented, or protect his inheritance and humiliate Keisha in the most public way possible. He chose his inheritance, because deep down, beneath the progressive politics and the diversity statements his investment firm published, Marcus Ashford believed his family's wealth was worth more than one black woman's dignity. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. Sunshine streamed through the windows of the Ashford estate. 200 guests filled the garden, sitting in neat rows of white chairs decorated with roses and silk ribbons. Keisha stood in the bridal suite, wearing a dress that cost $30,000. Her mother, Patricia Williams, adjusted the veil with tears in her eyes. You look beautiful, baby. Patricia's voice was thick with emotion, just like your grandmother would have wanted. Keisha touched the single piece of jewelry she wore besides her engagement ring. A delicate golden locket, old and worn, passed down through generations of Williams women. Her grandmother had given it to her with strange instructions. Wear this on your wedding day, baby. When the time is right, you'll know what to do with it. Keisha had never understood what that meant, but she wore the locket anyway, feeling its weight against her chest like a talisman. Downstairs, Marcus stood with his groomsmen, his face pale and drawn. His best man, Trevor, noticed immediately. You look like you're about to face a firing squad instead of getting married. Marcus forced a smile, just nervous, but it wasn't nerves, it was shame, because Marcus had decided he wasn't going through with the wedding. He was going to leave Keisha at the altar in front of 200 witnesses, and he was going to make sure everyone knew exactly why. The music started. Guests stood. Keisha's bridesmaids walked down the aisle in elegant purple dresses. Then came Keisha herself, walking with her father, Robert Williams, a retired postal worker who had saved for years to contribute to this wedding. She looked radiant, confident, completely unaware that she was about to be publicly humiliated. Marcus stood at the altar next to Reverend Thompson, a family friend who had married 3 generations of Ashfords. As Keisha approached, Marcus saw his grandfather William in the front row, his expression hard and approving. This was the moment. Keisha reached the altar. Her father kissed her cheek and took his seat. She turned to Marcus with a smile that could light up the darkest room. The Reverend began. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. Marcus raised his hand. Stop. The garden fell silent. 200 guests froze. Keisha's smile faltered. Marcus, what? Keisha, I can't do this. Marcus's voice carried across the silent garden. I can't marry you. Keisha stared at him in confusion. What are you talking about? Marcus looked at his grandfather, drawing strength from William's approving nod. I've learned some things about your family, about our family's history, things that make this marriage impossible." Keisha's father stood up. "What the hell are you talking about?" Marcus turned to address the crowd, playing to the audience like he'd rehearsed in his mind. "The Williams family and the Ashford family have a complicated history. My ancestors employed Keisha's ancestors, and apparently there are some unresolved feelings about that relationship." "Employed?" Keisha's mother's voice cut through the garden like a knife. "You mean enslaved?" The word hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Marcus continued, his voice taking on a defensive edge. "I've discovered that Keisha's family has been pursuing legal claims against my family's property for generations. This engagement may have been part of that strategy." Keisha's face went from confused to horrified to furious in the span of 3 seconds. "You think I'm marrying you to steal your family's money?" Marcus looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "I think it's a possibility we can't ignore." The garden erupted. Keisha's family members stood up, shouting. Marcus's family remained seated, their faces showing satisfaction that this uncomfortable situation was finally being addressed. Keisha stood at the altar in her $30,000 dress and something inside her snapped. Not heartbreak, not humiliation, rage, pure, focused rage. "You want to talk about family history, Marcus?" Keisha's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Let's talk about family history." She reached up and unclasped the golden locket from around her neck. "This locket belonged to my great-great-great-grandmother, Sarah Williams. It's been passed down through 5 generations of Williams women. Do you know what's inside it?" Marcus stared at the locket, suddenly uncertain. Keisha opened it with steady hands. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age but carefully preserved. "It's a property deed," Keisha announced to the crowd. "Dated March 15, 1845. For 500 acres of land in northern Georgia, purchased by Samuel Williams, a free black landowner, with money he earned working as a master carpenter." She held up the document for everyone to see. 6 months after Samuel Williams purchased this land, a white man named Jonathan Ashford claimed the property was actually his. He produced forged documents. He brought false witnesses. He used the legal system that refused to recognize black testimony to steal 500 acres of prime agricultural land. Keisha's voice grew stronger with each sentence. Samuel Williams was murdered 3 weeks later. His wife Sarah managed to escape with their children and this locket containing the original deed. She passed it down with instructions: "Keep this safe. Someday, someone will try to erase what was done to us. This is proof." Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. "That's just a story." "It's not just a story." Keisha pulled out her phone. "I'm an attorney, Marcus. Did you really think I wouldn't research your family before agreeing to marry you?" She held up her phone, showing documents she'd compiled over months of investigation. "I have the original survey records. I have witness statements from other families who were displaced by Jonathan Ashford's land theft. I have genealogical records proving that every acre of Ashford property, every dollar of Ashford wealth, was built on land stolen from my family." The crowd was completely silent now. Even William Ashford had gone pale. Keisha continued, her voice steady and devastating. "I found all of this 6 months ago. I hired 3 different genealogists to verify it. I consulted with property law experts to understand my legal options." She looked directly at Marcus. "And I decided not to pursue any legal claims. I decided that I loved you more than I cared about correcting historical injustice. I was willing to let it go, Marcus. I was willing to marry into the family that destroyed mine and just move forward." Marcus couldn't speak. His entire justification for this humiliation was crumbling. But apparently, Keisha's voice was cold now. "Your family couldn't extend me the same courtesy. You assumed I was the threat. You assumed I was using you. You couldn't imagine that a black woman might actually love you for who you are rather than what you could give her." She turned to address the crowd. "Marcus Ashford just left me at the altar because he believes I'm trying to steal his family's wealth. The wealth his family stole from mine 175 years ago. The irony would be funny if it wasn't so pathetic." Keisha's father stood up, his voice shaking with fury. "We came here today to celebrate love. Instead, We're witnessing the same racism that's been poisoning this country for centuries. Patricia Williams joined her husband. The Ashford family has spent 6 generations pretending their wealth was earned honestly. They've rewritten their history, erased the violence, and convinced themselves they deserve everything they have. Keisha held up the locket one more time. This is proof that everything the Ashfords own was built on theft and murder. And instead of acknowledging that truth, they chose to humiliate my daughter in front of 200 witnesses. She walked down from the altar, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a queen's robe. I'm filing a property claim on Monday morning. Every acre of Ashford land. Every dollar of Ashford wealth that can be traced to that original theft. You want to treat me like a gold digger, Marcus? Fine. Let's see how much gold you actually have when the courts finish investigating where it came from. The Williams family stood up as one and walked out of the garden. Half the guests followed them, disgusted by what they'd witnessed. Marcus stood at the altar, watching his wedding collapse, watching his reputation crumble, watching the woman he'd humiliated walk away with evidence that could destroy everything. His grandfather, William, sat in the front row, his face ashen. The secret the Ashford family had protected for 6 generations was now public knowledge, documented, and about to be tested in court. Reverend Thompson looked at Marcus with disappointment. Son, I've married 3 generations of Ashfords. I never thought I'd see one of them choose hatred over love. Marcus wanted to protest that it wasn't hatred, just protection of family interests. But looking at the empty chairs, the abandoned wedding, the evidence of his family's crimes being photographed by dozens of phones, he realized the distinction didn't matter. He'd chosen his inheritance over his integrity, and in doing so, he'd lost both. The question wasn't whether Marcus had made a mistake. The question was whether the Ashford family would survive the reckoning that Keisha Williams was about to unleash. 6 months later, Marcus Ashford sat in a courtroom watching his family's legacy being systematically dismantled by the woman he'd left at the altar. Keisha Williams stood before the judge with 3 genealogists, 2 property law experts, and a historian who specialized in post-Civil War land theft. The evidence was overwhelming. The original property deed from Samuel Williams, authenticated by multiple experts. Survey records from 1845 showing the land boundaries. Witness statements from descendants of other families who'd been displaced by Jonathan Ashford's systematic theft. Most damning of all was a diary entry from Jonathan Ashford himself, discovered in the family archives that Keisha had gained access to during the engagement. The entry was dated April 1845. Acquired the Williams property today. The Negro had legal papers, but no court will honor them over a white man's claim. Paid the sheriff $50 to look the other way when Williams protested. Problem solved. The judge, an elderly black woman named Honor Richardson, read the entry aloud in court. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were hard. Mr. Ashford, she addressed Marcus directly, do you dispute the authenticity of your ancestor's diary? Marcus's lawyer, one of the most expensive in the state, stood up. Your Honor, we acknowledge the document's authenticity, but we argue that property claims from 175 years ago cannot be adjudicated under current law. The statute of limitations, Judge Richardson interrupted. The statute of limitations doesn't apply when the property was obtained through fraud and murder. This court recognizes that Samuel Williams was denied due process because of his race. His descendants have standing to pursue this claim. Over the next 3 months, the Ashford family's entire financial empire was examined in forensic detail. Every property acquisition, every business deal, every dollar could be traced back to that original theft of 500 acres in 1845. The Ashford fortune wasn't built on innovation or hard work. It was built on stolen land that generated wealth for 6 generations, while the Williams family struggled in poverty. Marcus watched his family's carefully constructed narrative collapse. The philanthropic legacy, the business acumen, the generational wealth, all of it was founded on violence and theft. His grandfather William suffered a stroke during the trial. His father Richard aged 10 years in 10 weeks. His mother Catherine stopped attending court after the 3rd week, unable to face the evidence of what her family truly represented. But the most devastating testimony came from Keisha herself. She took the stand wearing a simple black suit, looking every bit the accomplished attorney she was. She presented a timeline showing how the Williams family had tried for generations to reclaim what was stolen. Legal petitions filed in 1867, dismissed because black testimony wasn't valued. Property claims filed in 1923, rejected because the statute of limitations had supposedly expired. Research conducted in 1978 by Keisha's grandmother, ignored because no lawyer would take the case. My family never forgot, Keisha told the court. We passed down the story, the documentation, the truth. We waited for a system that might finally acknowledge what was done to us. Marcus's lawyer tried to paint Keisha as opportunistic. Isn't it convenient, Williams, that you discovered this evidence right before marrying into the Ashford family? Keisha's response was devastating. I discovered this evidence 6 months before the wedding. I chose not to pursue legal action because I believed love was more important than justice. The Ashford family made a different choice. They chose to humiliate me publicly rather than acknowledge their history. So now I'm choosing justice. The courtroom erupted in applause. Judge Richardson gavelled for order, but even she looked satisfied. The final ruling came on a cold November morning. Judge Richardson's decision was comprehensive and unforgiving. This court finds that the Ashford family's wealth was obtained through fraud, theft, and racial violence. The original property deed held by Samuel Williams is valid and enforceable. The court orders the following remedies. First, all property directly traceable to the original 500 acres stolen in 1845 shall be transferred to the Williams family descendants. Second, the Ashford family shall pay restitution calculated at fair market value for 175 years of lost agricultural production, investment income, and generational wealth accumulation. The amount was staggering: $47 million in direct restitution, plus the transfer of properties worth an additional $89 million. The Ashford fortune was effectively cut in half. Marcus sat in the courtroom, numb. Everything his family had built over 6 generations was being redistributed to the family they'd stolen it from. His grandfather's worst fear had come true. But it wasn't Keisha's marriage that had destroyed them. It was their own racism, their own inability to acknowledge the truth, their own choice to humiliate rather than to love. After the verdict, Marcus tried to approach Keisha in the courthouse hallway. She was surrounded by her family, by reporters, by supporters celebrating this historic victory. Keisha, please, I need to talk to you. She turned to face him, and Marcus saw no anger in her eyes, just profound disappointment. You had a choice, Marcus. You could have chosen love. You could have chosen truth. You could have acknowledged your family's history and worked with me to make things right. Instead, you chose to protect a legacy built on suffering. You chose to humiliate me rather than trust me. Marcus had no defense. Every word was true. I'm sorry, I know. But sorry doesn't undo what you did. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that when it mattered most, you chose your family's stolen wealth over the woman you claimed to love. She walked away, surrounded by her family, heading toward a future where the Williams family would finally have the resources that should have been theirs for generations. Marcus stood alone in the courthouse hallway, watching the woman he destroyed walk away with everything his family had spent 175 years trying to hide. The Ashford legacy wasn't destroyed by Keisha Williams. It was destroyed by Jonathan Ashford in 1845 when he chose theft over honesty. It was destroyed by 6 generations of Ashfords who chose to protect that theft rather than acknowledge it. It was destroyed by Marcus himself when he chose prejudice over love. 1 year after the trial, Keisha Williams stood at a groundbreaking ceremony for the Williams Family Community Center, built on land that had been stolen from her ancestors 176 years earlier. The center would provide legal aid, educational programs, and economic opportunities for families affected by historical injustice. This isn't just about my family, Keisha told the crowd of reporters and supporters. This is about acknowledging that generational wealth in America often has roots in racial violence. It's about recognizing that we can't move forward without addressing the past. Marcus Ashford watched the ceremony from his car, parked a block away. He'd lost his inheritance, his reputation, and the woman he loved. His family name was now synonymous with theft and racism. But watching Keisha transform stolen property into community resources, watching her use her victory to help others rather than simply enriching herself, Marcus finally understood what he'd lost. Not money, not property, not status. He'd lost the chance to be part of something meaningful. He'd lost the opportunity to acknowledge truth and work toward justice. He'd lost the woman who'd been willing to forgive 175 years of injustice because she believed in their love. The question that started this story was simple. Have you ever seen someone's prejudice cost them everything they thought they owned? The answer is that sometimes the things we think we own actually own us. Sometimes the legacies we try to protect are the very things destroying us. And sometimes the people we underestimate are the ones who hold the power to reveal the truth we've been hiding for generations. What would you do if you discovered your family's wealth was built on injustice? How would you choose between inherited privilege and moral integrity? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of accountability and historical justice resonated with you, hit that subscribe button for more stories about truth, redemption, and the courage to confront uncomfortable histories. Because in the end, real wealth isn't measured in property or money. It's measured in integrity, honesty, and the courage to choose love over legacy. Thank you for reading. At Black Voices Uncut, we tell the stories that need to be heard, the truths that need to be spoken, and the histories that need to be acknowledged. Join us next time for another uncut voice.